Hi everyone. So welcome back to our induction day. I hope you had a great break previously. And then in next sessions we will have Mr. Warapsongpat Sanivongna Ayutthaya. He is an expertise on the design thinking and he's also a CEO of My Dojo. So please welcome Mr. Songpat Sanivongna Ayutthaya, our speaker today for the design thinking framework. Please welcome ค่ะ
Thank you very, very much. ขอบคุณมาก ๆ เลยนะครับ Thank you very, very much. Can I just check my sound very quickly? How's the sound on your side from here? Can you hear me from there? Or the sound not really working? Okay. Then let me just change this. Okay, how's the sound now? Is the sound okay from where you guys are? If the sound is good, can you write in the chat box and just tell me how it is? Great, thank you very much. Okay, thank you, fantastic. Okay, so it's the headphones that aren't really working then. All right, so let me just share my screen very quickly and let's get this show on the road. First of all, thank you very, very much for having me here today, and it's a great pleasure to be able to chat to you guys about design thinking and storytelling. So, you know, I think the key objective of these 2 hours is to really help you guys get some frameworks, get some help on how to do really well in the WOW Awards 2020. Okay, so you know, there's actually a lot of things that we can talk about, but design thinking and storytelling are actually 2 things that I would say would really help you in a big way. Let me just introduce myself very quickly. So my full name is Songpatra Senidvongs. That's the full name. My nickname is G. So please feel free to, 1 second. Screen not moving. 1 second. Sorry about this. Was it okay? Oh, okay. On my screen, it didn't look like it's moving. Okay, so yeah, my full name is Songpatra Sidvongs. My nickname is G, so please just call me G for the session. And essentially, what I do is I do corporate innovation. My background is in molecular cell biology, and here we go. My background is in molecular cell biology, and you know, I've worked with you know, corporate innovation for quite some time, and you know, this is something which you know, this is where I've learned a lot of my design thinking and everything as well. Okay, 1 second. I think there's something a matter with the sharing. 1 second. Let me just fix this quickly. Right, sorry about this. Let me just try it again. This is strange. It seems to not be sharing quite so well. 1 second. Let me just stop sharing very quickly. Sorry about this. Let me just fix this very quickly. Okay, so it's this one, and let's try this. Yikes! Okay, my screen sharing seems to be having problems of some sort. Don't know why it's doing this. Sorry about this. So I think I might just have to share the screen this way, if you don't mind. Sorry about this. Okay, so okay, I hope this works. Nope, sorry, that just made it even worse. All right, so I'm just going to share my screen this way, okay, so that we just get on with the session. So yeah, I work with corporate innovation. My background is in molecular cell biology, so I'm not a business person by training, but I've worked with a lot of businesses over the past 15 years, helping various organizations, especially telecoms and energy companies doing innovation in lots of different types of areas. And so, you know, design thinking has actually become something that I use a lot, and it's something that's really helped me out in a big, big way. And I certainly hope that it's something that's going to really help you guys when you do the WOW Awards as well. So with design thinking and everything, today we're going to talk through two topics very, very quickly. One is design thinking fundamentals. You know, what really is design thinking, and if we're going to implement this stuff and do this stuff, what will it look like, and how will we apply it to the WOW Awards? So that's something that we'll talk about today, and we'll also talk a little bit more about storytelling as well. So you know, how would we use storytelling so that we're communicating the ideas that we've designed for the WOW Awards in a compelling way that really does justice to the ideas that we've created. Okay, so let me just try sharing one more time, because the screen's kind of funny like this. Was it okay? Yikesy. Okay, sorry. Okay, if it doesn't work this time around, I really am just gonna. I'm just gonna go ahead. Okay, I hope it works. Okay. Okay, screen sharing, full screen, please work. No, it doesn't like my full screen for some reason here. Okay, never mind. Okay, we're just gonna go with this mode then. Sorry, I'm very sorry about this. But yeah, so let's just talk about design thinking very quickly. And I think, you know, with our session today, it would be a lot better if we are able to, you know, have a lot of interaction, because I certainly like you guys to participate and chat to me and stuff as well. And thank you for everyone turning on your cameras. That helps a lot as well. So just one question, just to get the chat boxes warmed up very quickly. Can you answer in the chat box, which year was tougher for you guys? Was 2019 a tougher year, or was 2020 a tougher year? Which is a tougher year for you guys, 2019 or 2020? Just type in the chat box. Okay, 2020. Yeah, me too. It's been a pretty tough year for us here in Thailand, and I think, you know, my clients from all sectors are saying, yeah, 2020 is definitely tougher. The guys from online, they're pretty lucky. I work with several online teams, and they say, oh, 2020 is a breeze, you know. Online has been going very well. So, all right, thank you very much for sharing. So, you know, design thinking is really designed for situations like this, actually, because, you know, in 2020, what I would say is that a question that I get really often is that, well, is there really a process for creativity and innovation? You know, is there a process for this sort of stuff? Well, the answer is quite simply design thinking. That is the process. And so that's literally what it is. It's a process for creativity and innovation, right? So whenever you need to design something, be it a product, a service, a process, a channel, a brand, you can use design thinking in many of those situations. But, you know, design thinking, what it tries to do essentially is it tries to help you to think and work like a designer. So the name sometimes is misleading, because it seems like it's a thinking thing. It's something that goes on in your head, but actually it's something that impacts the way that you work. And yeah, your thinking needs to change when you get into full design thinking mode, but the way that you work as well, it changes quite a bit in the way that you approach design and creating new things. So it tries to help you think more like a professional designer. Now, before I go on, because, you know, design thinking, it's not anything new. It's been around for quite some time. A lot of organizations use it. I'm absolutely certain some of you guys probably use it right now as well. So before I go on, just so that I gauge the level that you guys are at, my question to you guys is, how strong are you at design thinking? Okay, so when it comes to design thinking, what would you say is your competency level here? Okay, so the way that we'll answer this question is through Slido. So now you have a QR code on the screen, and please can you just get your phone and take a snap of that QR code, and you're going to get into a web page with 5 stars, okay? And just, you know, give yourself a star. So for example, I might say, okay, look, I'm a 1 star, let's say. I push 1 star, I push send, and then it updates, okay? So we don't know who is sending what, but we just know that the class results from 14, 18 people right now, 22 people right now, 23 people right now, we're at around a 3.1 you know, competency level in a very quick self-assessment. Okay, from 30 people, we're around a 3.1. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, so you know, you guys have heard of this, okay, and some of you are at a level 3. So I take it level 3, you kind of know some of the tools, I take it, of how you actually put it into practice and things like that. If you're at a 5 level, it means you kind of do it, maybe not on a daily basis, but you do it regularly or when the opportunity presents itself. That's around a 5. You actually do it when you're supposed to do it, kind of thing. Okay, fantastic. So thank you very much. So 52 of you guys have answered, 53 have answered. Thank you very much. So we're at approximately around a 3 proficiency level. Let me just tune the content to be around there then, okay? Right, so let me just get back to my screen sharing. Here we go. Okay, and I'm just gonna try a full screen again, just in case it works. But no, it doesn't like my full screen. Never mind. All right, we'll just go for the screen. I surrender. I go for the screen. All right. So around the three level. All right. Thank you. Because you know, design thinking, I would say it's actually classified as a oh, so some of you guys saw the full screen. Okay. On my one it says it wasn't sharing. Okay. I'm just gonna try sharing the full screen then. If you guys are seeing it on my one, there's a message that comes up that says it's not doing it for some reason. But okay. So design thinking is actually classified as a no, I don't think it's doing it. It kind of freezes on just one screen for some reason. Never mind. I'll just go for the screen. Sorry about that. Yeah, design thinking is actually very timely that we're talking about this because you know, design thinking, when it comes to years like 2020, design thinking it's really appropriate for this, you know, because now this year we've got, you know, there's a global crisis. Then, you know, global crisis, it creates all of these mega problems. So we're seeing a lot of mega problems coming across lots of different sides of life, whether it's work or family or lots of different things. But, you know, you hear entrepreneurs, you hear innovators say, you know, in all of these problems, there's always opportunities inside, right? You always hear a phrase similar to that. And that's true. I would certainly agree with that. That's very, very true. If you're able to seize and understand the new needs that arise due to these mega problems, right? New needs arise. If you can grasp these new needs, these new realities, and then use these new needs as a fuel to creating solutions that are really targeted at, really designed at resolving these problems and really satisfying these new needs that have arisen, then, you know, you're really quite a long way down in the innovation area. You actually make a lot of progress in that area. Right? It's getting these new needs, synthesizing it into solutions that are targeted at solving these mega problems. And if these solutions create benefits, create rewards, right, that are win-win. So, you know, the customer wins, the organization wins, the group wins. You know, if we can create these win-win solutions that has rewards for everyone, then design thinking is actually one of these tools that you can use to shape how the new normal and also the next normal could potentially look for the way that you work, the way that you approach lots of different areas of your work and of your life, of your career. So it's a designful approach to solving problems that arise out of crisis. So this is something that I've seen firsthand, and you know, one of the use cases that I've done for design thinking is, I'm sure you guys have been through this as well, but I have a 7-year-old boy at home. You know, he loves playing his games, he loves his friends, but learning from home, he found it tough, he found it difficult, not easy. So, you know, I kind of asked myself, I was like, well, so how can we motivate our son to be more interested in learning without having us supervise him all the time, having us there with him all the time? So how would we do this? And, you know, the wife and I, we got talking, and, you know, there's a ton of ideas that came out, you know, delete all of his games, chat to him so he understands, coach him a lot more carefully, get a CCTV camera and put it where he's working and we can watch him, and, you know, walkie-talkie him if he's playing games. You know, get his friends to come and study with him from home. Lots of different ideas, a ton of ideas came out. And, you know, eventually what we chose was the last one, which is just turn his learning into activities, right? So in the picture that you see on the slide here, you know, we're using flower vases, and we're filling it up with olive oil and water, and we just show them that, you know, different densities, you know, different solubilities, and the liquids kind of separate from the oil, and, you know, we show him that at home, so he's learning the things that he should be learning in terms of sciences, right? So this is one. Is this design thinking? I think so. We designed a very, very good way for our son to really get involved with learning from home. He actually started liking it towards the end. You know, now here in Thailand, we're now sent our kids back to school. But, you know, towards the end of learning from home, he loved it. It was great design. So that's one end of the spectrum where you can potentially use design thinking in your personal life. You know, you can actually use it on pretty much a weekly basis at least. But let me just take you to another side of the spectrum, right? So, you know, in like, you know, pretty intense innovation cases, right? And, you know, there's research that came out 5 months, 6 months ago that the coronavirus can live for several hours on some surfaces, including door handles, right? And we know human behavior. We touch door handles all the time. And, you know, so it'd be good if we can, you know, reduce the time that COVID-19 can survive on door handles. This is like, a question that was raised in the innovation community that I was around. And I was like, well, yeah, actually, this is quite a good topic. Lots of ideas came out. You know, some people were like, well, what if we put UV lighting in the door handle so it shines out, and it would kill the virus? What if we have a alcohol spray routine on the door handles? What if we got, you know, special sleeves for the door handles that are coated in antiviral gel of some sort? Or what if we put digital tech into the door handle to just warn users that, you know, the door handles need a wash? So lots of different ideas come out, and, you know, from those ideas, that there were a lot of prototypes very, very quickly. In this day and age, it's a lot easier to prototype and move forward with these ideas and turn them into tangible realities. So is this one design thinking? I think so too, right? So you know, there's lots of there's lots of ways in which design thinking can be used, and you know, the way that I view design thinking and the framework that my organization uses, we call it confident design thinking, right? And for your WOW awards, I would say this is it's a great tool, and it's really easy. You'll see within you know, the session, it's actually pretty easy. And, you know, it's based upon the Stanford approach of the design thinking. I've used this approach for many years. It's fantastic. It's really, really good. You know, it's a very natural way in which anyone can design just better, right? And when I say design, I'm not talking about just the aesthetics of how something would look, but I'm talking about the functionality of how something would work, as well as the aesthetics of how it feels, how it looks and stuff like that. The great design is always a mixture of both. And, you know, the Stanford design thinking process from empathize, where you understand your design target, you know, or we like to say, understand the customer. So, you know, you understand them so you can design better for them, or, you know, depending on who your design target is. If your design target is someone within the organization, it's an internal customer, right? So I tend to view it as a design target. You have to understand them, because without understanding them, it's actually really hard to design something that's meaningful and valuable to those people. Then, you know, as you empathize and you understand them, you typically try to understand their pain points, understand their needs. These are two big things you do in the empathy stage. And, you know, when you do that, you would find that, oh my God, there are tons of needs, there are tons of pain points, problems that our customers have, our design targets have. And, you know, you can't solve all of these issues and, you know, fulfill all of these needs through one project, and you don't need to. And this is where define comes in. This is where you say, well, let's be selective. Let's focus on these problems and satisfying these needs. And other things are probably not in the scope of this project, right? We're not going to satisfy those needs or solve those problems in this project here. And then, you know, once you do that, you have a very, you know, a much sharper focus for your ideation, right? And it's a big mistake, because, you know, some people make this big mistake, and they say, well, shouldn't ideation just be completely open, because we want, you know, lots of different ideas, they just make it really open. And we call that blue sky innovation, right? And it's, you know, it's actually really hard to do. It's like me saying to you, innovate. You'd be like, in what? What areas do you want me to innovate in? There's tons of stuff that we do, you know. What do you want us to innovate in, right? So, you know, once you define, right, you have this, you know, more narrow scope of what problems you want to solve, what benefits you want to give to the customer, and why this is important to your customer. Then, you know, you have a very good focus, and you actually get a lot more ideas with a more focused challenge statement, as we would say in the define phase. And then, you know, you think of lots of ideas, you synthesize, combine lots of these different ideas. And, you know, the thing that makes me love design thinking is that it's always a constant reminder that once you get ideas, it's really important that you move on to doing prototyping quickly. Don't stay on the idea for too long. It doesn't help. Thinking about the idea for another day or week or month often doesn't do that much. You know, but getting into prototyping quickly, a few hours can really take you a long way, because a lot of the times ideas become good, ideas become strong when you start doing pieces of it, or some of it, or certain aspects of it in your prototype. It actually develops a lot faster. And, you know, and once you do the prototyping, you kind of want to test it with your customers so that you really understand whether this is something that they are looking for. So this is the classic standard approach, right? The approach that I use, it's similar, right? Empathy, yeah, it's that. Define, I call it challenge, because then you actually think out of the box easier that way. Ideas, you're creating ideas. It's the same as the picture just then. But prototype and testing, I kind of do it together. I don't separate it into two stages. So I just call it experiment. So once you have ideas, you experiment with the ideas. That's how you develop them, and you really learn whether the idea is any good, or whether, you know, it's an idea that's not really going to go so far. A quick experiment can actually tell you a lot of stuff and save you a lot of time. And then, you know, after that, the part that I work with a lot of organizations on is scaling up, right? So once you've experimented, you've learned, you kind of see what's working, what's not working. Well, how do we scale it up into a full-scale project that we can launch to the markets, we can deploy across the organization? And that's the part that I like to focus on as well. So this is design thinking in brief. And the two examples that I gave earlier, were they design thinking? Well, yes, because you know, the first part, I understand my son is 7 years old. He doesn't like learning from home. He loves his friends, right? That's empathy. You know, that question that I had, how would I motivate him to learn without me supervising all the time? That's my design challenge. And then, you know, we think of a lot of ideas on the right-hand side. A lot of ideas came out, and we experimented with an idea. We learned what would work, what would not work, and we just kept on doing a lot more of these activities and experiments with him. And we learned a lot more about his learning style, and he had a great time, and, you know, started to like learning a lot more. The COVID door handle example, yes, you know, there's empathy about human behavior. We touch door handles all the time. Empathy about the virus itself, it can survive on the door handles. The design challenge, how can we reduce the time they can survive on the door handles, and numerous ideas and numerous prototypes that followed, right? So that it's a pattern, and, you know, regardless whether you're designing, you know, a really good birthday surprise for your loved one, or you're designing a strategy to reduce conflict with an important customer. Design thinking is actually a tool that can prove useful. When you do this, so for the WOW Awards, I'm really confident that you guys are gonna really like this when you apply it. But with design thinking, right? We call it confident design thinking because one of the aspects that's pretty important as well is this thing called creative confidence, right? Because without creative confidence, there won't be any action, because you'll just say, well, do we have to do that? Let me give you a really good example. You know, classic design thinking process, and I'll just use this one from now on, okay? You know, with design thinking, here's a big trap. A lot of people don't do empathy. They don't do full empathy. A lot of people would just say, well, I know my customer. I've worked in this area for, like, you know, a long time. I know my customer. Yes, I don't disagree with that. You know your customers, but do you know them in the perspective that we want to see in this design, right? Do you know your customer for this, you know, with regard to this particular issue or problem that we're trying to solve for them, right? And do you know them, but do you know how they think and how they perceive this problem, right? You know how you perceive the problem, but you know how they perceive the problem. People often don't do empathy, and they say, well, we know that our customers already, and people jump into ideation, right? And people do this a lot, a lot. And, you know, you'll find the temptation to do that. In the WOW Awards 2020, you'll find some temptation to do that. I highly recommend that you look at empathy and just talk to your customer, at least just have a conversation with the design target, because you're going to get a lot of good raw material, so that ideation becomes easier, right? So, you know, this is one example, but I'm talking about this because people jump certain parts because they don't have the creative confidence. For example, in empathy, creative confidence is the confidence to go and understand the customer, understand the design target. No, some of us are quite shy by nature, right? So we're like, well, no, we'll just imagine, well, what would it be like if we were them? And we used our imagination. I wouldn't do that. You know, there are ways that you can build your creative confidence, and design thinking, when you start doing it, it actually builds your creative confidence through the process as well, right? So once you have this creative confidence, which is your belief that you are able to design, you're able to create, you're able to empathize, you're able to ideate, you're able to experiment. Once you have this confidence and you start moving into design thinking, you'll be surprised just how easy it actually is. Now, the greatest thing about creative confidence is that it gives you the innovator's eye, right? And you know, what that means is that creative confidence, it really allows you to see through the problems and find the opportunities within, right? Because, you know, without creative confidence, you'll get stuck at the problem, and you'll feel really horrible and nasty and, you know, twisted, and you go, oh God, we have all these problems and it's really horrible. But, you know, with good creative confidence, you actually move into the opportunities and the solutions. You move into that a lot quicker as well, right? So and these things I would recommend, if it makes any sense, please read up on this sort of stuff as well. You can Google this, you can find some good materials online on the stuff. Design thinking, by the way, I can chat to you for days on this, right? We have courses that last days on design thinking. We do programs on this. But today we only have 2 hours, so I'm just going to give you the really important parts so that you can apply it to the WOW Awards, hopefully. All right. So when we design, so another thing that's useful when we're talking about design thinking is that when we design, what are we really aiming for, right? And when we design for business, what is great business design, right? What is great business design? And actually, the answer is just quite simply this. Our aim when we design is we want to design something that's desirable. So desirable is basically, some people want it. The customer or the design target, they want this thing because it's solving a problem. It's satisfying a need that they have. It's desirable to them. So this is actually the first thing that you need to make sure your designs have, your project have, is this desirability. It really solves a problem that's painful to a group. And then the next thing in great design is that, okay, if you have a solution, that's great, but can you do it for real? And this is feasibility, right? Design thinking, the thing that makes me love this design thinking is that it kind of grounds you. It's not an approach to innovation where you're thinking of like big, vague ideas and vague concepts, but it really grounds you to reality, right? Because our second measure that we use for great design is it feasible? Under the realities that you're facing, that you're in, can it be done for real? Can this solution be done for real, right? So this is feasibility. And number three, it's viability. And viability, we often talk about, does it create the cost reductions, the increase in sales volume? Does it create the financial value, the financial viability that we demand from these projects that our organizations invest in? But viability, it's more than just the financial value. Viability actually includes intangible value as well. For example, does it strengthen our brand? Does it help increase our team's engagement? Does it make our work, less errors, and we can work a lot happier in this way? So we look at both the financial and non-financial value that comes out of these designs. And so it's these three things: desirability, feasibility, and viability, right? These are the three things. And you really want your designs to be in the center of this picture, in this white space here. That's where you want your design to be, where it's desirable, people want it, it can be done for real. It's quite practical to do. We can do it under the realities that we're in, and it creates value for our organization, for our customers, for our teams, right? So this is the aim. Design thinking just tries to, help your projects turn into this kind of thing. And when we look at design thinking, you can break it into two halves really, to make it easier to understand. The first two steps and some parts of step number 3, when you ideate, we call this problem verification. We do this first. We verify what the problem is, what is the nature of the problem, what are the details of the problem, what are the pains created by the problems, what are the needs that our design targets have, right? So you kind of verify that you really understand these problems clearly from the design target's perspective, right? Because we're designing for them. And the second chunk of it, so it's the other half of step 3 and prototyping and testing. This is solution verification, because after you have your ideas, you have a solution, you need to make it tangible through a prototype, through experimentation. And then you verify with your targets that, okay, well, this is the right solution, right? This is the way that you want the problem solved, right? So the second half, it's solution verification. And it's a process that's non-linear. So it looks like a line here, but when you do it, you don't just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and you kind of finish. You actually learn. It's a process of learning about your design targets, about your solutions. So you actually just go through different phases of design thinking through a particular design project. Okay, so that's design thinking as a big picture. Let me just jump into the details of each box, so you kind of know how to apply this stuff. So with your WOW project, right? I understand it's designing ways of work, ways that you work, ways that you add value to your organization, to your customers. One of the easiest starting points for me is I would look at what are some of the big problems or the big needs that are not being satisfied right now. I would look at those, or I would even look at opportunities. What are the opportunities that you see right now, right? If we're going to create some innovations and that's different and adding new value, what would you do? What are the opportunities that are out there, right? And this is a little bit outside design thinking, but I would look at things like mega trends. I would look at consumer trends. I would look at data like that, right? Just to get some inspiration and see where the areas of opportunities are. And then I would get into the whole empathy phase, right, where we empathize our design target. And when it comes to empathy, we have lots of ways of doing it. And surprisingly, just asking the customer what they want, asking the design target what they want, is actually not really the best way of doing it. And I'll explain in a few minutes why, right? There are different ways for you to really understand your design targets well, so you can design great projects for them. And the ways that we do it, right, we would say immersion is key. Immersion is the first thing that I would do. The second is observation, and the third is engaging with the design target. So what does this really mean? What this means is when you do immersion, you basically try and get the same experience of the problem, of the situation, as your design target would, right? So, just before I came to you guys, I was talking to I was running a webinar for an organization that sells motorcycles, right? So similar question to them. I asked them, how would you understand what it's like being someone who's buying a motorbike for the first time? How would you understand this, right? And several of them said, well, maybe I should go and just try the process of buying a bike for the first time myself. I've never bought a bike before. I'll just try it myself. That is immersion. Right? You basically immerse yourself into the same situation, problem, context, as the design target, as the customer would, right? So that's immersion. Get your own experience. And the easiest way to view this is like, imagine you're trying to design a children's toy, right? But you don't like children's toys. You don't have children at home. You don't have nephews and nieces. Actually, the last time you played with a child's toy was 40 years ago, 30 years ago. It's going to be pretty tough to empathize, and design a children's toy, right? You would have to actually have a go at playing with some of these children's toys, right? So this is immersion. You try and get the experience that the user would get. Then the next step is I would go into observation. I would do that next. So then I would observe the design target having that experience, right? And I would observe, and hopefully, observe in a way that I see the real behaviors there. I would observe them like that. And then after that, I would go and engage them. So I would go up to them and I would start talking to them and maybe ask them some questions. For example, when I saw you use that software just then, towards the end, you're clicking your mouse really frantically. Can you just elaborate on that? What were you trying to do when you were just clicking your mouse like nuts just then? What were you doing, right? So that and if you do observation before the interview part, then there's a lot of material, a lot of raw material for you to talk to your design targets about in these customer interviews. But you know, a lot of people, they rush into the interview and they just interview and ask questions. I don't really recommend that, and you'll see in the next slide why. Because when we do empathy, right? You know, one of the things that we really aim for is we try to find these 3 levels of needs, right? Customers, you know, design targets, they have different levels of needs, and there's different types of needs as well. There are primary needs, so these are the key needs, right? Secondary needs, which are essentially the details of the primary needs, sorry, right? Secondary needs are the details of the primary needs, right? And you know, there are these things called latent needs as well, right? So let me just check this through with you guys very quickly. Let's just get back onto the chat box again. Okay, but let me ask you this. Let's just go for a can of beer, right? Can of beer. I've got myself a can of beer. Could you give me some examples of primary needs that a can of beer can help solve or satisfy? Can you just give me some examples? Just type into the chat box. What would be some primary needs that a can of beer can help solve? And this is not beer, by the way. Some primary needs that a can of beer can help resolve. All right, we have some answers. Okay, so to fill an emotional void, right? So yes, you know, to feel loneliness, yeah. Open ability. I'm not too sure if I'm understanding this the same, but is this about like liquid courage and things like that, where you know when you've had a can of beer, you kind of talk to strangers a bit more openly, right? It could be that as well. Yes, you know, allows you to go and be more open. Talk to strangers more. Yeah. And any other primary needs that you feel a can of beer can satisfy? Would thirst be one? Can beer help you know fulfill the primary need of thirst? Right. That's yep, thirsty. Right. So so this is another primary need. You know, the need to have fun or to get drunk, right? You know, I want to get drunk. I have a can of beer, you know, or have several cans of beer to help me get drunk. Digestion could be. I actually haven't heard of beer helping with digestion and stuff, but could be. Yes, right. So you know, to be happy. Yes, thank you. So lots of these primary needs, right? Now, let me just take thirsty, right? Let's say we take thirsty for a primary need. An example of a secondary need for thirsty, right, would be, you know, quench thirst in a sociable manner, right? So I'm quenching my thirst in a sociable manner, right? This is the secondary need. The primary need is quenching the thirst. But I kind of want to do it in a way that I'm sociable, right? So it's a detail of the primary need, right? I want to quench my thirst in a sociable way, right? So that's a secondary need. Now, there are these types of needs that we call latent needs, right? And so latent needs, essentially, some aspects of them is that latent needs are needs that are they're unmet, right? And they're quite often hidden, right? So when we say they're hidden, what it means is that it's not always easy to explain what this latent need is. It's not easy to communicate it out. You know, sometimes it's difficult to communicate. Sometimes the design target, the customer is not even aware that they have these latent needs. Okay, so this is need number 3, and you know, for example, a latent need would be, you know, can you guys give me some examples of potentially? Well, yeah, thank you very much. You know, seeking approval, right? Seeking approval could be a latent need for, let's say, a newly turned 18-year-old, right? A newly turned 18-year-old, a guy just turned 18, and he can drink beer now, and he's drinking the beer, seeking approval that now he's a grown-up man. He can have a can of beer. So this can be a latent need, and it's hard for this 18-year-old to communicate that, oh yeah, I'm seeking approval. No, he's probably not going to tell you that, right? It's a latent need that's hidden inside. He probably won't try to show it to you. He probably won't tell you these things. Thank you, peer pressure, wanting to fit in. Thank you, fantastic, right? So these are some examples of possible latent needs that an 18-year-old may have in drinking beer, right? So, and by the way, just before we go on, what is this picture that you're seeing on the screen? What is this a picture of? Can you just type in the chat box again? What is this a picture of that you're seeing on the screen right now? What is this a picture of? Yeah, it's an island, yes. All right, melted iceberg, potentially. The inspiration came from an iceberg. Yeah, it's an island, right? And there's the sky in the back and there's clouds. But you see, here's the thing. And this happens every time, strangely enough, happens every time. If and when you actually do empathy for real in your design, and you get into empathy for real, you actually do these things that I'm talking to you about in this previous slide, right? You're immersing yourself, you're observing your design targets, you're going in, and you're conversing with them, finding out a bit more about their needs and their situation and their pains. What you find is that actually, you start learning quite a bit more. And you start saying, wait a sec, oh, so this is the problem. Oh, so it's like this. Oh, you see it like this. Oh, you're experiencing this. Okay. And what you often find is there's actually a lot more latent needs than what meets the eye. And there's a lot more latent needs. And that's all these needs hidden away in people in all these various design projects that I've been on. And once you really get into empathy, sometimes you step back and you go, oh, what I was given or what I thought was in the original design brief is actually not the situation that is in reality for my customer, for my design target. So as you can see from the picture, it's not an island. It's a dinosaur skull, it just dunked in the water, and it's been there for quite some time. There's some moss on top, right? So you actually end up seeing quite a different picture, through doing empathy and through doing the design thinking process, right? And we often ask, okay, well, can't you just ask people to tell you things? Well, no. The first thing is sometimes your design target doesn't even know that they have these latent needs, right? Sometimes they know and they just don't want to tell you, be it private reasons or pride or emotions or whatever. Thank you very much. All about finding root causes, right? But this is finding root causes the human way, right? Because quite often when we talk about finding root causes and root cause definition, we use tools that were developed in the industrial age, right? In the age where we're looking at, finding root causes of problems in a windmill, in a machinery plant or something. But when we're finding root causes in a human-centered design situation, right? Design thinking is a way that can really help you with that. But you're exactly right. It's finding root causes for things that are to do with human problems. Yeah, and it's not only that, but if you ask people and they do tell you, right? Quite often you get intention. People tell you their intentions. What they would do in that situation. That's an intention. But when we design, we've learned that if we design based upon intention, that can get us into a lot of hot water, because people's intentions and people's behaviors don't always correlate. For example, I fully intend to run every day, you know, and swim every day as well. I fully intend to do that. But sadly, my behavior is I don't do that. You know, I don't swim that often. I don't run that often. You know, but my intentions, yeah, I would tell you on a questionnaire, yeah, I intend to run and I want to run, but my behavior is actually very different. So when we design, you know, especially when we design innovation, we really pay attention to people's behavior more than what their intentions are, because that's a really great fuel for great design. When we observe, right, you know, we observe to understand behavior, right? And you know, if we can observe natural behavior, that is really, really best. That is top notch. But you know, when we observe, we often want to really deeply observe. So you need to observe, you know, what is the person doing? What is your design type doing? Observe the what, but you know, also observe the how. How are they doing that particular thing, right? And why are they doing that? So let's just go back one picture, right? So in this picture here of this design target, this lady buying some milk, right? So what is she doing? Well, the answer is she's buying some milk, right? How is she doing it? Well, she's crouching down and she's on tiptoes. She's balancing, and she's looking at something. So it seems, right? So that's how she's buying the milk. She is crouching down. She's doing this. And why would she why would she do this? Why is she not standing up and buying the milk? Thank you. She could be checking on the expiry dates, right? So and the expiry dates are kind of small, and it's on the actual packaging. It's not on the shelf. So she needs to crouch down and reach to get to the packaging and check the expiry date there. Right. So, you know, when we observe this is what we mean by observation. And you know, if your situation allows, or if it's appropriate, or, you know, if it's not rude, it's not strange for us to take lots of pictures when we observe as well, because we can then take the pictures and look at the details later and, you know, use it as raw material for designing great stuff. Okay, so and you know, and there are tools like, you know, the customer journey map that's designed to really help you to plot out the customer's journey from their point of view, right? So whoever your design target is, you know, what is their perspective, their experience that they're going through, and once you plot out one of these, it's actually a lot easier to design something, because quite often when we design, we want to design for a great experience, and that often involves looking at more than just one aspect or one part of that experience. So customer journey mapping, I certainly don't have time to go for a full tutorial on this. We need a lot more time for this, but please look up customer journey mapping. If you don't know it already, please read up on it. It's really, really good. And it saves you a lot of time when you're empathizing and understanding your targets. But in a nutshell, very quickly, you know, customer journey mapping, you're looking at the customer's goal at the various stages of their experience. So it could be walking into a shop, selecting the goods, going to the checkout, taking the goods to the car, and then going back home, right? These are stages. What are the customer's goals at each stage, right? You know, getting to the shop, you know, getting there conveniently, getting there quickly, right? And then you look at the customer's actions. So in order to accomplish these goals, what do they do? What are the customer's actions right now, right? So you know, you look at what they actually do in their behavior, and if you've observed your customers, then you're going to have some really good material to work with in your customer actions. Now, if you're really good at observation, and if you do a good interview after your observation, you can really ask questions to really get down to how your customers are thinking and feeling, right? So, and this is where the magic starts happening, because this, when you look at how people think and feel, it surfaces a lot of the pain points and needs and latent needs that start surfacing around here. And you can map out the customer's experience with a graph in the customer experience lower box, right? And once you map all these information together in a template similar to this, and you know, there are many ways of doing a customer journey map, by the way. This is just one way that I do it. It's just nice, easy way. then you understand the customer's experience from their point of view. Okay, so a very, very quick introduction to empathy. This is where we often start. You get your raw materials here, and then you can design some really great stuff. Then you define. So today I'm not going to go through define, but let me just get into ideation. And the best way to do ideation, I would say, is just to do it, not just to talk about it. Let's just do it. So let me ask you this question very quickly, and please just tap into the chat box. What can you do with used tires? Okay, I want tons of ideas. I want lots of ideas from you guys. What can you do with used tires? Okay, any idea, please just type your ideas into the chat box. You can type down more than one idea. You can type down lots of ideas. Just keep on tapping, right? And I'll just give you 1 minute for all of you just to keep on tapping and just share the ideas. What can you do with used tires? Okay, type it into the chat box. Fantastic. I'm seeing great ideas. Wow. Roads, like in India, a great innovation by the Indians. Fantastic. Using, used tires instead of all these other chemicals that we usually put on roads, right? Fantastic. Flower pots, kids' play zones, plants. You can use it as furniture. You can use it as garden decoration and a backyard swing. You can use it as flower pots at the roadside. You can, there's tons of ideas. You can build a castle with it. Why not? It would be a rubbery castle. You can use it in gyms. Gyms would use it, right? Training material. Well, I'm using it as a training material right now. For corporate training, but I think you mean like weightlifting training material. You can certainly use it for that. You can assemble several together and turn them into a table. And why not put some chairs with it right there as well? Right? Thank you very much, you guys. Okay. So, you ideate very, very readily, very, very easily, right? But if I asked you whether you ideate this freely or this readily when you work, would you ideate this freely and lots of ideas just coming out very, very quickly when you're working? Some of you may say no, I don't ideate this well when I work, right? But you see, when you work and when you play, you actually ideate very differently. You create ideas in a very different way, and being relaxed is one way to create ideas. You're often a lot more creative when you're relaxed. So if I asked you, where in your home are you most creative? The answers that I've got in the past would include things like when I'm sitting on the toilet, I'm very creative there. When I'm in the shower, when I'm cooking some food for the family, there's lots of places right there where you'll be creative. When I'm lying on my bed, just before bed, right? And in these places, you're often relaxed. Right, and when you're relaxed, your creativity muscles, they just work a lot better. And when we ideate, some tools also help. Some methods also help as well. For example, you can do free flow brainstorming. That's fine, right? That works. I'll show you some brainstorming rules very quickly in a few minutes. You can grab inspiration from the outside, because whoever said innovation, you have to create everything yourself? Don't have to. You can see inspiration from a different industry, how a different industry has solved a similar problem that you've met, right? You can see how different people approach a similar problem, but in a different context. So search for external ideas. Look at ideas from the outside. Look at case studies. That helps a lot as well. You guys are good at ideating. You guys just keep on going and going and going. By the way, this is good. You guys ideate very, very well. And number 3, you can do resource-based ideation as well. So where you don't just look at the ideas or the possibilities, but you look at the resources that you actually have, and you go, well, this is what I have. We have this. So how can we use the resources that we have to solve the problems that we're seeing right now, right? Or satisfy the needs that we're designing for? So you can start ideating based upon the resources that you have and see what you can do. That's another way. Many different ideas, and there's not only just these three. There's tons of ways where you can create great ideas, right? But the thing that I want to draw your attention to is this slide here, and you know, this is from IDEO. They created this, and these are some of their rules on how to create really great ideas and how to run really great brainstorming sessions, right? And you know, let me just ask you this question quickly, and you know, feel free to type it in the chat box, or if anyone wants to unmute and just voice, you can do that as well, I guess. You know, but you know, when you look at these 9 pieces of advice, let's just say, for ideation, which one would you say is the most important? Which is the most important out of these 9? Right? And there's certainly no one right answer. With innovation, with this field, it's often no one right answer. There's often many different variations of the right answer, actually. Yeah, which ones would you say it's the most important one, right? Okay, go for wild ideas, right? If you want something to be really innovative, you're going to need to go for wild ideas. If you stay with the ideas that are safe, then you know you're not really going to get that, right? Fail early and often. This is really key as well, because you know, with innovation, with using design thinking, the process itself is actually designed as a process for exploration more than a process for just getting the work done, right? This is how you explore intelligently and really discover these great solutions that no one's done before. Design thinking really helps you do that. So going forward, so failing early and often is a part of that, because you're not going to be able to innovate without failing a few times, you know, on the way there. In the 15 years that I've done this, can't even think of one project that didn't fail. They all failed, you know, first before they succeeded. They failed first several times. Some projects, they failed several times, in fact, right? So, you know, lots of different ideas here, okay? But actually, you know, a lot of you guys are talking about go for wild ideas. But here's the tricky thing. Going for wild ideas actually isn't possible. It's not possible if another one doesn't happen first. Can you guess what must happen first before the wild ideas come? Otherwise, you're not going to get your wild ideas. It's just be the normal, safe ideas. What must come first out of these 9 on the slide right now? Out of the 9 advice on the slide right now, what must come first before the wild ideas will start coming? Now, this is quite hard. This is quite difficult, right? Stay focused on topic. It helps with the wild ideas, actually. Fail early and often. Build ideas of others. Define. There's one that you guys aren't saying right now. It's actually one of the ones that I don't think anyone's really raised in the chat box. Thank you very much, Kun, for sorry, I can't pronounce this very well. Perasmian, Connect, and Autobot. Thank you very much. Yes, it's this one. It's deferred judgment. Thank you. Yes, this is the one. This is the one. If you have a culture or a situation where people are ideating under judgment, which means you ideate and then you say, oh, is it good? Or is it bad? Or can we do it? You know, is it a good idea or a bad idea? If you judge too early, you don't get the wild ideas, right? Because that's what kills the wild ideas. It's the judgment, you know. If he will see that, oh, I ideate this and I'm going to get judged for it, then you're not going to get the wild ideas. So deferring judgment is actually one of the really key ones here. And many of you are in positions of leadership of some level within the organization. So I would say this is certainly something that I would highly recommend. You know, keep this in mind when you ideate. Just defer judgment. We don't really care if it's a good idea or a bad idea, to be honest with you, right? When we initially do ideation, we care about the number of ideas. quite simply because what we've learned is that a lot of the greatest ideas are actually a combination of several not so good ideas and assemble them together in a way where it just makes more sense. And the bad ideas kind of turn into, oh, actually, when that's together, it's actually not so bad idea, right? So we find that happening really often, actually. And, if you look at the way that you guys ideated just then, someone said table, the next person said chairs, right? This is building on the ideas of others. And when you have a situation where you don't have judgment, you can just do that a lot easier. Anyways, let me just keep on going. So ideation, this is also something that we can chat about a lot more. But there's so much to that you can do to create great ideas. But this is some of the things that I follow like religiously. I follow this really strictly, and it really helps in a big way. All right. So once you get the ideas, right, and by the way. From my experience, what I found working with these different organizations is that for many organizations, the problem actually isn't that the organization doesn't have ideas, right? And I think this could be similar to some of your organizations as well. But the customers that I've worked with, many of them, well, not many, but some executives would say, gee, for heaven's sake, today, no more ideas. We have tons of ideas here, but we don't have many projects. We want projects. We don't just the idea. We want projects that are innovative and creative. And that's where prototyping comes in, right? And prototyping, it's really designed to move your idea from the intangible, conceptual idea to making them, real, tangible and real in this world, right? So prototyping, and many apologies for the Thai, you'll be getting translated versions of these slides. But prototyping, essentially, the key advice is that it shouldn't be complex. Make it as simple as you can, right? If it's gonna take you longer than a week to do your prototyping and testing, make it simpler. You have to make it simpler. And this is key, because in order to turn ideas into projects, prototyping, it's really what it's about. So it needs to be simple. It needs to be fast. You need to do it so that you get feedback very quickly, right? And the question that I often ask people is, okay, let's say I want to do a mobile app, right? My idea is a mobile application. And if I asked you who should I talk to do a prototype of my mobile app, who should I talk to in the organization? Now, if you tell me that it's IT, right? Talk to IT, talk to the programmers, then no, that's not what we're talking about for prototyping, right? If you're talking to talking to programmers, if you're talking to IT, we're looking more at something that's more similar to a final solution, right? So we wouldn't prototype initially with that group, but because initial prototypes for mobile apps that I've worked with, that I've seen, they kind of look like this, right? It's something that you do on paper. This can take you like an hour. You don't need much more than an hour to do this. What are the various user interfaces? What are the screens? You can talk someone through this, have them push a button, and you just manually move the card. So you go to the right screen, you say, okay, what will you do next? Then you see how your customer would interact with a paper user interface. This is prototyping, and we see this quite often. You can go one step easier. Just do it on PowerPoint. These are the interfaces. Okay, what if you push this and just program it to go to the slide where you want it to go for the next screen, right? So you can do this for doing prototypes as well, right? Now, some of you guys will say, well, does that have to be expensive? What if it's a physical product? Well, I'm sure some of you can remember this product here, the Palm Pilot. We haven't seen one of these guys for a long time, right? But for some of you guys who may not know what a Palm Pilot is, it's essentially you put your schedule there, you put your your daily agenda there, and you keep your telephone numbers in this device instead of jotting it down on a piece of paper. So this has been replaced by the smartphone, a long time ago. Even normal phones replaced this a long time ago. But but this is the prototype for the first Palm Pilot in 1995, and actually the story is actually really interesting, because if you look at the tablet thing, right, you can see that it has rough edges. This is actually the back of a menu. This is the back of a menu, right? And the stylus, if you notice carefully, it's a chopstick. This prototype was created in like half an hour in a Chinese restaurant, as the developers were having some ramen in a Japanese restaurant, right? So, and so that's why it was drawn on the back of a menu. This is what we mean by physical prototyping. And when you start getting into this early, your ideas just develop a lot faster than just sitting and thinking about ideas. So from ideas moving to prototyping, it really helps in a big way. Some of you guys will say, well, what if it's a service or a process? If it's a service, you can prototype by role playing. This is a very common way. Singaporean Airlines do this. They're very well known for their great services in the skies. But looking at this picture very quickly, you might think that they're in an aeroplane. They're not. This is a training room. This is an airline's training room. Think about it this way. When was the last time you saw pot plants in a plane? Right? You don't have pot plants in a plane. You don't do that, right? So this is a training room for Singaporean Airlines, and they're just role playing and prototyping a new customer service that they're thinking about delivering on their planes. You can write storyboards. That's another popular technique for prototyping. Just get your ideas out, draw pictures. Even if you're a lousy artist, I'm horrible at drawing. But once you start drawing and making your ideas visual, actually your ideas grow, people engage with it more, and your drawings don't have to be beautiful. We're designing here, we're not having an art contest in the WOW Awards, right? Right, so prototyping is really key. Now, the heart of it is this, the way that you do it is this. Look, prototyping is really important because innovation, because it's new, we haven't tried it before, we don't know if it's gonna work. There is a failure rate, right? And according to the Harvard Business Review, in their research, 40 to 90% of new products are not successful. And this is dependent upon industry, depending on which industry you're in. But because it's like this, we then need a way to make innovation happen. And sadly, it's not the Nike approach where it's just do it. We don't go, ideas, and we implement. We don't really think about it this way. We kind of go for then we experiment, right? We kind of use this process a lot more. And when you're, for a lot of the leaders in this session here, when you start viewing the way that you approach innovation more of as an experiment, you actually get a lot of, really big benefits for actually doing something really simple. For example, if you start viewing moving into innovation as experimenting, and you call these things experiments, essentially you're giving your team permission to fail early and often, because that's what an experiment is, right? You don't know if it's going to work. That's why we're experimenting. You're providing permission for people to fail often and fail early, so that you arrive at the right solution faster than your competitors do. All right, so we don't approach it as implementation and just do it. We approach it as experimentation. And the way that you experiment, at Mind Dojo, what we recommend to our clients, what we do ourselves, we love the lean startup approach. We love the lean startup. Okay, so if my assistant can just tap into, actually no, I'll just tap into the chat. So, you know, the lean startup, I don't know how familiar you are with this. Lean startup is this, right? So, you know, if you're familiar with the lean startup, you know, it's the lean startup, the name is misleading because it's not just for startups, but this is how startups innovate really quickly and using very little budget. This is how the startups do it, right? So it's something that's really useful, and it's pretty easy once you start trying it and experimenting with the stuff. But essentially, when you experiment, right, where you are is you have your idea, right? From ideation, you have some ideas. You selected an idea that you feel you select an idea that you feel, you know, is desirable, feasible, and viable, hopefully. So you have this idea. Now it's time to build, right? And what you build is you build a product, but it's not the finished product. It's not the whole product, right? You build a thing that we call the MVP, right? So the MVP stands for the minimum viable product. We'll get into this in a few slides, but essentially just view it as a working prototype. That's what it is, right? MVP it's a working prototype. So you build a working prototype if possible. That's the product. You then get this working prototype and you put it into the hands of your design target, your customer, and then you kind of let them play with it. You kind of let them test it out and try it and use it. You know, in its very limited design, very limited functionality even. And, you know, you can ask them, what was it like? Any problems? What's good? What's bad? And you gather this data, right? And by observing and allowing your user to have an experience with this solution, with this working prototype, you get data a lot earlier, right? And you learn, you go, oh, okay, well, they approach it like this. Oh, okay, fine. Well, why don't I just change the design in this way then? And then maybe it will solve their problem better or generate value that they want more, right? And so you then learn, and then you develop your idea, and then you just experiment again. And it's a cycle. Right, and just to give you a time indication, and you know, I love the comment, by the way. I fully agree with the comment. The lean startup has a lot of Kaizen concepts, right? There's Kaizen everywhere in that. Yeah, there's tons of Kaizen in that. So yeah, I fully agree with that. Thank you. You know, and what is Kaizen all about? Well, in my opinion, it's efficiency. You reduce waste. You don't waste stuff, and you make things very efficient. Well, lean startup, right? We believe in eliminating waste and stuff in the design process of innovation as well. Yeah. And then, you know, and that's how it works. So let me just take you through a very quick case study, because I'm looking at the time, and I think I have maximum something like 30-40 minutes. So let me just get a move on here. Let me show you this in action, and I'm very sorry that the slides are in Thai, but I think it's a very good case study, right? So what happened was this. In 2009, right, two students from Harvard, they had an idea for a business, and they said, well, we want to do online clothing rental, right? Online clothing rental. And so they said, okay, well, we don't have any money. We're two university students. How do we approach this? We want to do this business, right? And they were going to write a business plan, but then they said, well, no, a business plan, you know, it becomes, you know, for a startup, becomes out of date. When you finish writing it, it's out of date already, right? So what they decided to do was to use the lean startup approach, right? And so what they said was that, okay, their idea is to do clothing rental online, okay? But they're not going to start there, because when you do experimentation, you want to do experimentation so that you reduce uncertainty and you turn assumptions into facts, right? So I don't think any of you guys can read Thai, so I'll just ask you this question. If you're going to do a clothing rental business, right? And this is 2009, by the way. What are some questions that you may want to find answers to before you open your business? Yeah. Okay. So just have a quick think about it. And you know, and the answer that these two girls came up with, what they said was, well, okay, well, we want to know whether, you know, middle class to upper class ladies, would they rent nice dresses at 10% of the purchase price, right? So instead of buying for 100%, you rent it for 10% of the price. Would they do that? And would they return it? Right? They wanted to find out that question. So what they did in that experiment, very simply, got their clothes. They bought some, but very little, borrowed some clothes from friends. And they had 130 articles of clothing, right? They had 130 dresses. And they opened up a temporary shop in the university. And they were there, you know, with the clothing, saying, hey, rent my clothes, rent my clothes, rent my clothes, right? And you know, they did that for a week. And what they found was 35% of their customers who walked into the shop rented clothes. And 51 out of 53 returned the clothes in good condition. Okay, so they're like, oh, okay, so people will rent clothes at 10% of the purchase price. Okay, assumption now turned into fact, right? They feel more confident. And you know, their idea essentially is that, you know, they don't want to do a physical clothing rental shop, right? But they want to do an online clothing rental shop. So, you know, can you just type in the chat box very quickly, what is the limitation of online clothing rental compared to renting clothing in a physical shop? What is the limitation of renting online compared to renting from a physical location? Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, you can't try it on, right? You can't try. So, you know, does it fit? Does the clothes fit? So that's the limitation. So their next question was like, well, would people still rent clothes if they can't try the clothes on, right? Because, you know, they need to find this out before they start investing into doing this business. So what they did very intelligently was they just went to the same little hole in the wall as the first week where they rented their clothes. And this time around, people supported them more. They had customers and they had more friends. And so from 130 dresses in the first week, in the second week, they had 260 dresses, right? And they used the same shop and people come into it, oh, I want to rent. But this time around, they said, oh, if you want to rent, here's the clothing, here's the size. You can't try it on though. Would you still rent it? That's all they did, right? And here's the surprising thing. If you look at the data, the first week, when people can try it on, 35% of customers rented. In the second week, when the customers can't try the clothes on, intuitively, we would think that, yeah, less people should rent, right? If you can't try it on, less people should rent. Intuitively, we think of this. But in reality, that's not what happened. More customers rented in the second week when they couldn't try the clothes on. My question to you, and I want you to type the answers into the chat box, is why? Why did more customers rent in the second week when they couldn't try on the clothes than the first week when they could try on the clothes? Why did more customers rent in the second week? Okay, so refer to review. So they had some referrals from friends. Yes, quite possibly. Not the key reason though. Better and easier return policy. They didn't have a return policy back then. So if it doesn't fit, you just return it, or you have to pay the price. Curiosity could be a part of it. But if you look at the data, apart from not being able to try on the clothes, there's another data point that changed in week 2. Apart from not being able to try on the clothes, right? You remember in the first week, 130 items of clothing, right? In the first week. In the second week, they had more support. They had 260 items of clothing, right? So what the team learned actually was that, not trying the clothes on actually wasn't a big factor that led to the behavior of renting, right? But actually, if there was more selection, it's the selection. That's the thing that drives rental behavior, right? Is, do you have the clothes that the customer likes? If your selection is big, then there's a much higher chance that the customer would rent from you, right? And if they didn't do this experiment, they would not have found this out. And if they didn't find this out, then the lives of these two girls, Jennifer Hyman and Jennifer Fellis, same name, maybe that's why they're friends. And, you know, they would not have started Rent the Runway, right? And Rent the Runway today, you know, it's a great company. They have great web presence, great web design. Their mobile app for renting clothes is superb. And, you know, ever since 2015, they've made like 80 million US since 2015. And I think these days they're making in excess of 100 million US in revenue, right? So, you know, they've really grown a long way. But where do they start from? Two girls with a rug in a little hole in a university saying, rent my clothes, right? So, and this is what we find happens in innovation, is that, you know, innovators, we think big, but we experiment small, and we learn really fast through these small experiments. You know, there's lots of different types of experiments. You know, in the WOW Awards, you can do a prototype, meaning it just illustrates, it communicates the concept that you want to do for your innovation. You can do one of those, I think. You know, but I recommend, if you can do a working prototype or an MVP, a minimum viable product, you know, you can actually demonstrate some of the core features. And, you know, these days, I don't know what types of ideas or projects you have in mind, but, you know, I've worked with teams that are programming, you know, apps using low code or no code programming tools. You know, designing a working prototype for an app even, using low code or no code programming tools. Relatively easy these days. So you'll be very surprised at what you can actually do when you start experimenting and creating prototypes, you know. And a working prototype actually isn't as difficult as we often think, and there's a lot more that we can talk about this. But essentially, what I need to leave you with is that, you know, when you create MVPs, it's not the finished product. When we say working prototype, it may have very limited functionality, it may have very limited design, right? But it's something that can show some functionality of what your design idea is. Okay, so you know, this is something that I really encourage you to do. And then when you do your testing, you know, you're essentially testing whether your idea has a desirability, feasibility, or viability. And I've spoken about these guys already earlier in the session. Okay, so I'm running very low on time. I'm going to need to do this, you know, extremely quickly. But you know, if you've designed something awesome, you've prototyped it, you have a working prototype, I think you're going to be in a really good shape for the design, for the WOW Awards 2020. But I've also seen many great ideas and many great projects just fall at the last hurdle when they present, and they're not able to engage the decision makers, the senior decision makers. And you know, it kind of goes pear-shaped, right? So let me ask you this question, and we're going to go into this. Actually, I don't think I have time for this. Sorry about this. Let me just skip this one very quickly, because there's some really great content that I want to spend more time on. But essentially, the things that make you nervous, what we often find when I ask this, is that the things that make you nervous, the answer that cures a lot of these nerves when you present, and you know, it helps you to present in a very natural way, you know, helps you be a much more natural presenter, is what I would say is it's the art of storytelling, right? Let me just skip this slide. But storytelling. Okay, I'm a molecular cell biologist, so I'm really into what happens within people's bodies. But essentially, storytelling changes your brain activity, and this has been scientifically proven. It activates different parts of the brain, allowing greater retention, greater engagement. It allows the listener to feel like they're actually in the story at that point in time, right? So when you present your innovation, your WOW Award projects, right? I really recommend that you use storytelling techniques, and this is what I'll go through with you very, very quickly today, right? I'm not going to go through so much on the whole presentation delivery side, but if you need to present through the webinar, through Zoom, for example, right? Some of the things that really help, some techniques that I use, right, is one, I would use headphones. It seems like mine isn't working for some weird reason today, but it could be because this is the 4th webinar of the day today. So use headphones. Quite often you're not in a room quite so quiet as mine. So use headphones to present. It really helps your audience to understand and hear what you have to say. When you present in Zoom or through virtual, the way that I do it is I imagine that I'm looking at a window, right? And it's not a mirror, but I'm presenting through this window to the audience, right? Now when you do that, what I find is your natural body language comes through a lot more. Your natural tones come through a lot more because you kind of feel like you're talking with people. And when I present through Zoom, for example, I always just slide through and look at you guys. And thank you very, very much that everyone has their cameras on. It just makes it so much better. Thank you. I look at you guys and I feel more engaged with you as well. Even though some of you, I just see certain parts of your head or your face, it's okay. There's no problems, right? It really helps there as well. So, I present through the camera as opposed to at the camera. If you're presenting at the camera, it's not nice. It doesn't feel very good, especially if you're not a naturally outgoing or extroverted person, and it doesn't feel so nice presenting at the camera. But if you imagine that this is just it's a window and you're presenting through the camera, quite often it feels a lot easier this way as well. Okay, and your natural tones, your natural voice, really comes through, and it makes a big difference. Presentation skills, delivery skills. My main advice to anyone is, if you want to present well, you just don't present. You either do a storytelling approach to it, or you do a conversational approach to it. Just, think that you're having more of a Skype conversation as opposed to a Zoom webinar or virtual session, because that's kind of nerve-wracking. But if you think, this is more like a conversation through Skype or through whatever platform you like to use, it really makes it easier. Okay, and when you present, right, the key is this: the sequence that you really need to make sure happens, right, is that you need to start off with understanding, right? The stuff that you communicate must be understandable, and that's kind of ironic because you guys can't really read Thai, but I have it in Thai. Very sorry about this, but this one says, your content is understandable, right? The second one, it says persuasive, right? Because if what you're communicating is not understandable to the audience, then there's a big chance they're not going to be persuaded by whatever you're communicating, right? And if they're not persuaded, number 3, it's change. You're not going to change very much. You're not going to change their decision making. You're not going to, change, create meaningful change through the presentation that you've just delivered, right? So it's understanding leads to persuasiveness, leads to change in behaviors and change in decision making. Okay, and that's something that is useful to think about when you are assembling your presentations. Now, for great presentations, right? What I would say is you need to know your objective. So this is point B. Point B is your objective. right? And you need to kind of know what you want to do, what you need to do, right? This is a good place to start. When you prepare your presentation slide decks for WOW Awards 2020, you also, I really recommend you understand the audience as well. That's point A for audience. Okay, you need to understand your audience's perspective, who your audience is. So for the audition rounds, I don't know if you're aware of who your judges are, who your audience is that you'll be presenting to. You need to know them, right? Because once you know your audience well enough, you'll then be able to create a compelling presentation that will move your audience from point A to point B. And point B is where you want them to be, because that's your objective. That's what you want to achieve through doing this presentation here. Okay, when you try and understand your audience, let's go to this version, which should be easier to understand, right? These are 7 questions that I would really recommend. If you understand your audience in these 7 questions, fantastic. Question number 1: what are these people like? Like who are your audience? What are these people like as people, right? Second question is, why are they here? What are they expecting to hear from you in your presentation? So for WOW Awards, right? They're here to find great ideas, innovative ideas for the organization, or innovative projects that the organization's done. What keeps them up at night? What is the pain point? What is it that really concerns your audience, right? You need to know their motivations, their pains as well. How can you solve their problem? And does your idea solve the audience's problem? Does it put the audience in a better situation by listening to your idea and becoming a part of your idea, or by approving your idea? Can it solve that problem? What is it that you actually want them to do, right? So this is your call to action, as it were, your key objective. What is it that you want them to do? And it's always good to just have a nice call to action that really helps to progress your project as well. Okay, and how can you best reach them? What is the type of information that they like? Are they numbers people, graphs people, visuals people with lots of pictures, or do they react better to video, right? And how might they resist? The thing that people get nervous about the most in doing presentations is the Q&A part, right? So if you start thinking about the things that your audience may potentially resist in your idea, you're basically preparing for Q&A. That's what you're doing by answering this question here: how might they resist? Okay, and for the WOW Awards, from my understanding, there are 3 categories. There's WOW projects, WOW idea, and there's the sustainability categories. You need to find out about this. The WOW Award teams, you need to contact them and make sure you have the information for you to understand what these categories are. The evaluation criteria, right? You need to understand this, because this is what you'll be assessed upon. In the WOW Awards, they give you marks according to these criteria. You need to understand what these criteria mean, what these criteria are, and how can your project really illustrate that you are delivering upon these criteria, right? So this would really help you shape a lot of the aspects and the contents of your presentation. Information like this would really help in a very big way. Okay, so plenty of criteria, so there's a lot of guidelines on what's expected, and you can certainly get this information from the WOW Awards program. Okay, now earlier I introduced you guys to the desirability, feasibility, viability Venn diagram, and yes, these 3 things, if you notice, actually are in line with several of these criteria here as well. Okay, so I'm not going to pick them one by one, But, you know, with a lot of innovation, with a lot of great design, it really is going to link somewhere with the, you know, desirability, feasibility, and viability of the various programs. Okay. Now, very last part, I think maximum I have around 10 minutes, 15 minutes until I'm over time. Very last part. Let me just go through this extremely quickly. So when you do storytelling, right? Let me just give you some elements of great innovation, pitch storytelling style presentations, right? Let me just give you some pointers here, right? Because when we design our innovation presentation, there are certain elements that we often just need to do, because when we present to investors, if we don't have this information, they just can't decide whether we're a good company to invest in or not. So, you know, we would need to have this type of information. And by the way, this is generic. You know, this is for most types of innovation presentations. But when you're, you know, for example, if you're doing a internal innovation, for example, a process innovation presentation, you probably wouldn't be talking about your business model in your innovation presentation, because it's not to do with a new business model. You're not creating new revenue streams, right? So you don't always have to have every single part of this, but you know, these 9 key elements really cover the major contents that we often see across a different variety of innovation presentations, right? So I'll just go through these one by one, and the easiest way of doing it is I'll use the Airbnb pitch deck, right? And just show you how, you know, Airbnb used this type of framework, just add some explanations as well. So quite often in the pitch deck, we would be given the problem, right? And Airbnb certainly did that as well. You know, you need to kind of explain the problem that you're trying to solve through your solution. And if you can communicate that the problem is a pressing problem, is a big problem, is a problem that's really relevant to us, right? And if you can story tell it. So for example, when you describe the problem, you might even be explaining the problem through the eyes of the customer that you interviewed and observed in your journey mapping, right? You might story tell through that. You know, this is the problem that I've observed, and it's like this. I've observed it in many situations, and just tell the story of the problem, right? So that people really understand what types of problems you're trying to solve. Then the next step is, well, what's the solution then? What's your idea? What's your solution, right? So Airbnb then goes on to show that, well, our solution is we have our website, we have our platform, we have our portals, and they explain what Airbnb is. They explain how Airbnb works, right? And they explain how they are better than other substitutes that are out there. Then, you know, at this point in time, if you're going to explain a business model, you might use a simple tool like a business model canvas. That's also possible. Or, you know, you can just go through the key ways that the organization will be making money through doing the solution, right? So Airbnb tells how they, you know, where the revenues would come from, what types of channels. After that, you then quite often we find a section about market size. Where, you know, we actually describe how big this opportunity really is, how big the problem really is, what is the market size for customers, how many customers are there, you know, you can talk, you know, Airbnb have done it through, you know, volume, through numbers. You can talk about market size through value, like how many how many million, billion US dollars, or, you know, whatever currency is relevant for that market. And then after that, what Airbnb does is they talk about their competitors, right? So they compare their competitors, who they are, how the competitors are competing, and, you know, how Airbnb are better than their competitors. Okay. By the way, every single slide that I'm using for this session, this entire session, you'll be getting PDFs of of these slides here. Okay, so no worries about that. We certainly want you to try and use some of these tools, and the version that you guys will be getting will be in English. Okay, very sorry about the translation issue. But anyways, yeah, they talk about their competitors, who are they competing with, who can substitute Airbnb, and why is Airbnb better, right? Then they go through their marketing plan, right? How they get market adoption through this, how they get people to use their solution more. So in the marketing plan, it's really about how you get to the customer, how you communicate with them, how you onboard them on to your innovation. The team behind Airbnb, the founding team, and what skills do they have? Why are these guys the right guys for the investors to invest in? Why them? And can these three really make Airbnb great? And hindsight has taught us these three really did make Airbnb great. And then traction. Now, this is key. Now, the Airbnb way, they use user testimonials, right? But when you look at traction, and I'll just shortcut you to this, in my opinion, traction is probably one of the most important parts that decision makers look at when they decide if they're going to invest into you. Traction is basically, how much have you done? Like, where are you, right? This idea, is it still idea stage? Or do you have a communication prototype for it that we can see somewhere? Or is there a working prototype that we can try somewhere? And if you have a working prototype for your Wow Awards idea, bring it into the presentation, or either bring it into the presentation, or if it's a virtual presentation, find a way where people can. Sorry about that. Oh, signal kind of went. Okay. Find a way where people can try your innovations for real, right? So traction is really key. It's the part that really differentiates between projects that are still in idea stage and it hasn't really gone that far, to projects that we've actually have a working prototype, and it's something that you can have an experience with, like today, right now. So, if you can find a way for people to have an experience with your idea, that would be fantastic. But doing it virtually, remotely, is more difficult, because this approach, most often we kind of do it in a face-to-face presentation. But, there are certainly ways to do it remotely as well, in this day and age. And, then we look at the financials and the call to action. Right, and this is the last part. You need, quite often it's good to have a call to action, like, why are you presenting this to the committee? Why are you bringing this, idea to the stage here? Is there something that the senior management can help you do? Is there anything that decision makers can help you with to help move your program further and make it stronger and, get more collaboration? For example, budget. If you actually need budget after this, you've done all the prototyping you can do. With no budget, you've cleared the assumptions that you can clear, but hey, to go to the next step, we actually need to start spending money now. We have several working prototypes. Then, this is what this part is there for in your call to action, right? So the Airbnb slide deck looks like that, but there's so many different ways of doing this, right? Where the same components just sequenced in a different way. You get a different presentation, you get a different story, right? But each of these elements are designed to be plug and play. So you just decide, how does your story flow, right? And there's no one right answer, all the different flows I've shown you, they've all been great stories. Well, here's another great story. Problem, solution, model, magic, marketing, competition, team. You can do it this way. But, this is a great story as well. Problem, then solution, then magic, then model, right? But, this is also fine. What's the customer's problem? And, is your competitor part of the customer's problem? This is the Steve Jobs approach to doing new product pitches. Steve Jobs does it this way. He always makes his competition part of the customer's problem, right? Then offers the Apple solution that will make the customer's lives a lot better. and then just sell on the Apple magic why this cannot be got anywhere else, right? And what's the business model? You know, there are lots of different ways you can do this, right? And with the same information building blocks, you are able to craft very customized stories that are relevant and most suitable to your innovation ideas. Okay, so you know, for the storytelling part, I hope this helps. We will be translating this for you. Sorry, I did have an English version somewhere else, but trying to find it, I was like, okay, it's not being found today. Maybe today is not my technology day, but you know, certainly I hope you've enjoyed this session, and you know, I hope you found it useful. In my opinion, design thinking is important. It's something that can really help in a big way. Storytelling just really gets your ideas heard and gets your ideas acted upon. I hope these two skills would help you, and I certainly wish everyone the very best of luck in Wow Awards 2020. You know, in the handouts that you'll be getting, you'll be getting my telephone number and my email as well. So, you know, if you need help, if you do need support, definitely feel free to just drop me a line, send me an email. You know, Thai Bev Group as an organization, as a group, has been great to me over the years. I've worked with you guys for quite some time. Thai Bev has helped me a lot over the years. So I'm certainly going to help you guys be successful in Wow Awards 2020. So I hope you've enjoyed this session. And if there's any questions, you know, please feel free to just type into the chat box. If there's anything that you want to learn more about, you want more help on some stuff, just type it into the chat box, and we'll just make sure that we get some information to you guys. But I hope you've enjoyed this session. Thank you for participating and having a great time with me. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much. สวัสดีครับ
Thank you so much อาจารย์ค่ะ Thank you very much ค่ะ I hope you guys enjoyed the session. So if you guys have any questions for Kun Ji, so please type in the chat box, or after the end of sessions you can just email me and I'll pass this to him. So alright, so before we end the session today, I would like to tell you about our audition round, which will be happened on the 15th to 18th of September. Okay, we have on the 15th to 18th of September. The time for presentation is 7 minutes for your presentation times, and then you have another 3 minutes for the Q&A session. So it totally will be 10 minutes. All the schedule for each team will be announced by this week. So I try my best to announce it by tomorrow to use for your preparation. So about the presentation template, you can create in any design that you prefer, anything that you fancy to make your content like more effective and in the way that you want. But I'll provide you a template in the cover page that needs to be following with the Thai Babe template for the corporate things. So at the end of the session today, after the sessions, I'll send you an evaluation survey on your satisfaction for this, and then we will provide you a t-shirt for everyone. It's a Wow Award t-shirts. Right, so I'm not a good model to represent the t-shirts, but yeah, we will survey you the t-shirt size, which will be sent to you after the sessions as well. So if you have any questions, just keep typing in the chat box or email me, and that should be fine. And finally, I want to thank you for your thank you Kun Ji ด้วยนะคะ Thank you Kun Ji for teaching us today and everyone to be here. And I hope to see you in our audition round. So thank you and have a good night and have a good day too, guys. Bye ค่ะปิดกล้องเลย